Yeah, my name's Tim Adams. I work for the Local Government Association. I'm a program manager. I've been doing this job since about 2001, so I'm one of the few people that's held on to the same sort of area and remit for quite some time. Before that, I was in the commercial sector for 20 years in IT in companies in Cambridge. The work we've been doing in my programs has been trying to make sense of the vast amounts of information and data that's collected by local authorities. And during the noughties, it related more to the business needs of the councils. Any company that's running an organisation, running a series of services or products, needs business information about its customers and its performance and its finances and so on. And there's a wealth of data. The problem we have is that local authorities are vast in number. There's currently about 352, I think it is, in England. And they're all doing the same thing, but they're all doing it differently. And we're not trying to stop that. That's local democracy. It allows local citizens to hold their councillors to account. But more particularly, they're collecting information. And during the noughties, the Labour government was very keen on collecting information about the sector and doing clever things with it. There was moving more services to e-delivery. There was savings and the annual efficiency reports councils had to do. So my job over the decade was trying to work with the councils to come up with a series of information sharing standards in which they can tag and report their data so it can be brought centrally more easily and used for other things. Mainly over the course of the period has been for central government analyses and so on. But what happened in the time when the coalition government came into power in 2010 was the introduction of the transparency agenda. Councils would publish more and more data openly for other people to do clever, innovative things. So thankfully, the work we've been doing in my programs has come very usefully, and we're starting to now see how it can be rolled out to people like yourselves to do other things. But the problem is, let me start with the landscape. I've mentioned the number of councils. They're not natural data publishers. They're running a series of services, as your companies run services. They're not collecting data for you. They're collecting data to run their businesses. And we have to find a way really of breaking down the concerns they have about, is it good enough? Will we be challenged? The cultural issues, the fact that it might not be in exactly the form you need, and how we can then start to roll it out for other people to use so you find it rather than you have to keep asking for it all the time. And my job over the decade or more has been coming up with a series of controlled lists or standards, a mind map, where most of this data is tagged. So all of those data sets I'm talking about that may be available may be broken down into a whole series of different functional areas, and some may be of importance and interest to you, others may not. I do stress all the slides, and most of the slides I'm showing are screen dumps of the tools I'll be giving you links to so you can look at these things yourself later. So there's data there, but how do we surface it from these 350 different organizations? Well, there's an infrastructure emerging in the public sector where we try and bring this data together in a way that you can find and use. At the national level, you're aware of the data.gov.uk initiative, where councils and other public sector organisations are encouraged to register the fact they're publishing data there, so you can go to one place and find out what's available. And also there's an initiative with the ODI, the Open Data Institute, where organisations are self-certifying the provenance of that data, their commitment to it, where it came from, how often it will be updated, the licensing under which it's published, and so on. At the local level, we've got a three-stage hierarchy that may be of interest to you. Starting in the middle level there's the inventories, the catalogues of data that councils are publishing. And we're coming up with a standard schema for inventories. So, and it's an uphill battle, we're not there yet, but councils are starting to publish their catalogues, their inventories consistently, so that your apps and your systems and data.gov.uk and others can find those inventories and record the fact that there's data available and where it is. Then underneath the inventories, we've got these individual data sets, and we're coming up with national schemas, structures, formats, which allow people to try and put data out for their data sets in those similar or same forms. So in principle, you can take data from different councils. Some may have more data than others, but the basic minimum of the schema will be supported, and you can see what it is and aggregate it together and do clever things with it. And aggregators are starting to emerge at the bottom, where there are systems, and we've got solutions on our pages, I'm sure others will be around as well, where you can go and pull out all the data from all the local places where these data are and start to aggregate them together. And the standards I've been working on also allow you to dice and slice the data by a whole range of other areas. You can drill down to wards, or you can look at one council in combination with another. Or you can look at it by functional area, children's services, adult social care, transport. You can look at individual services that councils are delivering, and there's a vast range of classifications. So the idea is to try and make it as simple as possible for councils to publish at least minimal data consistently so you can do clever things with it, resolve this fragmentation and enable you to find it and do innovative things and build businesses on that we are not able to do or haven't got the time. The idea being that the data is all over the country on individual websites, but councils are able to publish their data on their website, register it in a central place so that you can aggregate it together and others like you and produce apps and data sets and graphs and charts and services around that information. The LGA is centering most of these services on a program called LG Inform Plus, and that's the landing page of that with the link at the bottom. Most of those tools and services are for local authorities. We're a member organisation for councils to help them do their jobs, but increasingly many of these services are starting to be open up more widely for people like yourselves to do things. And it started with the development of these information sharing standards, and we have almost now a mind map of local government information. It breaks down by different sorts of precise definitions, and data is tagged by one or more of those. These are, you can click them, they're interactive. Individual functional lists, and they interconnect together. So the critical one is probably the service list, the 1,500 different things a council does, from licensing a sex shop to emptying a wheelie bin. There's not many companies that have got quite so many different wide-ranging services for which they're collecting data. But critically, these are all integrated together. So there's a life events list. What happens to us as people as we go through life? We're born, we die, we pass our driving test, we start school, we have need for benefits or whatever it might be. And so you can start to look at the services that relate to that life event. You can start to look at the link to the powers and duties list, which shows what legislation says councils should deliver. So there's a very clever 360-degree view of going around the data and finding things. And under the open data part of the service, there's a whole range of tools and services for councils to help them do this data and publish it this way. I'm not going to really spend long on this page because it's probably more for local authorities, but each of those gives information and useful information about inventories and schemas and data sets and URIs, Uniform Resource Identifiers. What that means is we're encouraging linking our local government data to other data, so serendipity, and you can start to stumble across and find trends and do clever things which haven't been thought of or realized before. Now, URI is really just going to a different website where there is a precise definition of that area of expertise. So you've got the Office of National Statistics have precise definitions of measures and metrics. You've got the Ordnance Survey, precise definitions of geographies and the boundaries of wards and areas. We have in the LGA the ability for you and others to create your own neighbourhoods. So if you're not interested in a council, but you're doing something with the voluntary sector or with a little project area, you can start to assemble interactively your own geographies by clicking areas, linking them together, giving them a name, and our reporting tools will pull out the data aggregated to your geography by a bit of Blackpool and a bit of Doncaster and so on, and do all the rates and the analyses and the percentages and so on. And as I've mentioned, we break it down by service and function and procurement type. There's the NEPOS Pro class, and there's entertainment categories and so on and so forth. So what I want to just bring your attention to is to have a look at another time on the areas of the open data. We ran, for example, a trial last year where we had what we call the Open Data Incentive Scheme within local government. Cabinet Office gave us just over £500,000 as an incentive to dice up and slice and give a small amount to all those councils that wanted to participate to see if it worked. And what they had to do, we had a big debate with the developer community and the councils, what's easy, what's hard, what would be useful. And we centered on planning applications, premises licenses and public toilets for some reason. And it's not just the fact there's a public toilet there, it's its accessibility, when it's open, when it's cleaned and so on and so forth. And councils were invited to come with consistent schemas that we developed and gave them information about. And with help, we were able to give them guidance on how to participate, what to do, and precisely the 3 schemas that define those definitions of how they publish the data on their website and the process to follow. And the schemas particularly were such that it defined the columns of data and the cardinality and the level of resolution and precision and the formats and so on. So they all did it the same way. And that way, then all over the country, we've got public toilet data, but we can aggregate it together to very easily put it into a form that other people can use. And it's been taken further now. You may be aware of the Transparency Code. Department for Communities and Local Government have authorised and directed that local authorities will increasingly have to publish certain data sets, and things like fraud and senior salaries and contracts let and procurement spend and this sort of thing. So we're doing the same thing. We're working with information managers and people like yourselves in coming up with the schemas that are the best way to publish this data consistently. And it's not mandated, so it's an uphill struggle, but we do have a large percentage of councils buying into this because it helps them. They don't really know what to do. They're not publishers. They're starting to publish data consistently. And we've got pages where we define those schemas and where you're able to find these things and use them usefully. So the results and the benefits, I would say, are you can go to our inventories pages and see what councils are publishing, where it is, and the content of the data. I found a lovely one 2 or 3 weeks ago. Peterborough City Council freezes dead animals. Did anyone know why a council freezes dead animals? And I was working with them. I asked them questions about it. And it's in their inventory, and they publish how many rats and mice and rabbits and dogs they froze last quarter. And it goes back for years. And when animals are killed on the roadside, it's the council's duty, if the owner can't be found, is to take the animal and freeze it for 6 or 9 months in case said owner comes to council and is looking for little Rover, little Freddy, and the dog or the cat or the rat is there waiting to be. Amazing things that's available. That came out of the inventory because they publish it and you can find it and it's consistent. I don't think many councils do that one, but that's the example. We've got the schemas, the format of the data against all these raft of data sets that are emerging, where they are, how they're used, how you can rely upon incorporating them into your systems in machine readable form, so your apps can read them and interrogate and analyze them, or human readable form. We've got, and other people have got harvesters and aggregators, so there's lists, looking for dead animals, which councils are publishing dead animals. We'll tell you what we know about at the minute and where they are. And then what that means, this is a silly example, I know, but it's serving a purpose. We can now produce a countrywide spreadsheet of toilet data by going to the aggregators, finding all these published data on each council website, all consistent, align the columns, and you've got clever things like that. Data to use, but more particularly starting to emerge now are apps being developed. So you can go to the Great British Toilet Map and find your nearest toilet if you're in holiday or you're a pregnant lady or something and emergencies beckon. So I'll finish on some examples of what we're doing in our sector with a view to maybe encouraging you to think of better ways and more innovative ways of doing it. One of the lists we have is the metrics types list, 3,500 and counting measures about our sector, performance, the people we serve, how we're spending data, how fast we empty wheelie bins, or how fast we close roads for roadworks and so on and so forth. And there's a whole raft of these data measures. There's a list of them. I've gone to the metrics types list, and it's broadband, and it's receiving court orders against children, and a whole raft of them. And what we've got is a public service called LG Inform, which allows you, the public, to look at pre-prepared reports that we and councils have developed for you to share and analyse and use. Councils themselves can register and author reports and share them with individuals or even the general public. So here's a dashboard of a particular council. Look at a whole raft of different measures: under 18 conception rate, employment rate, looked after children, academic achievement with GCSEs and so on. Or you can produce specific reports. So that's looking at London boroughs, crime rates. It looks like Westminster's got the biggest problem, and these are all the other London boroughs working through. You can produce maps and charts, and you can go down to the raw data and see this over temporal time periods for rafts of data. Councils themselves, the public can't do this because we don't have the bandwidth, and it's a subscription-based model we run for our councils. We can grow this if there's an interest and a need, but you can do this yourself with the data. They can drill down into their individual boroughs and their territories, so they can look at ward and lower geographies where the data supports That's looking at care provision, I think, in Leeds, and they can see where there's more care being provided for free and where there's less so, and they can produce bar charts and data sets and so on, based not on councils, but on wards and lower areas, again, as I say, when there's data available. So they can start to do analysis and run their business, but more particularly, find which councils are doing better than them and why, and we encourage engagement to sort of learn from each other. So what one particular council does in the last month is, I think it's the South Holland Council, they put together a report which is online for their councillors, and these are just extract pages from their report that they've shared, and it's giving their councillors information about the ward that they're responsible for, especially newly elected wards. Vast amounts of data that's there for you to be using and building businesses and helping us be more innovative in the country's aspects. Final thing to say, that's my last slide really, I think, is what we're looking at is opening up these services to people like yourselves. You're a new customer to us. I've never been invited to speak to the commercial sector. Now I say that in 15 years since I joined the public sector. I spend my life working with information managers and senior managers and local authorities. So this is a start for us. We need your feedback and your interest. We are opening up this data as a starting point, as a direct data feed to all that data I've been describing to you through an application programmable interface. And if you go to the API section of the pages, there's help pages telling you what it's all about. And there are web services calls, so you can build applications. The Great British Toilet Map is an example where you can make calls within your apps that goes automatically and pulls these data sets together. Then you can do innovative and clever things with it. There are data tools where you can set up the area of interest or the combination areas of interest, whether you want raw data or adjusted ranking and so on. The metric or metrics, and you can start to build tables and download those into JSON or into spreadsheets and so on, and do things corporately on your desktop type solutions. Or more particularly, you can start to develop applications of which you hopefully can build a business and make money out of it. Here's an example of an academic one that was done a few months ago where some academics got together and they've got the best place to live in London. And you can't see this at the back, I know, but by cost of living and safety and quality of education, pollution, level of public service support and so on, they can aggregate all the data from what we've got and produce clever sort of scores, and you can click around and see where it might be worth you living based on your demographic needs and requirements. So my message really is there's a wealth of data in our sector. It's all over the place. It's in all forms and it's highly fragmented. We're trying hard to come up with ways of bringing things together. It's not being mandated that we should do this by central government. So we're having to encourage councils, and we have to come up with business cases for it being worthwhile for them to do, as well as helping you in what the benefits might be in receiving that data. But if you can see experiences and ideas, then I'm sure you can, that we haven't thought about, then I really encourage you to try it. You can go online and register and get a key to the API and so on. We have a launch event. It's an informal thing. You don't have to come to that on the 9th of July in Westminster in the local government headquarters. It's just to show some examples, but you don't need to do that because I don't expect people from the Northwest to travel all the way to London for an hour-and-a-half briefing in London. But there's online pages. We're just starting this and trying things. Lots of links and tools available. Please contact me with your interests. Thank you.